Welcome back to the Bookcast. My name is D.L. White. I am an Atlanta based author living in the South. I've been writing most of my life, but I started releasing books in around 2015. I have ebooks in uh, ebook, paperback, and audio, select titles in audio, and I just have been thinking really about bringing my stories to a new medium. And I keep seeing these bookcasts everywhere, people reading their books and releasing them in a serialized version. And so it's something that I would like to try. And as some practice, I've decided to record my holiday shorts as little bookcast episodes. A couple of people have asked about bringing these to audio, and they're really too short for that to be something I could do. But I could record it myself and put it on my website as podcasts and let you guys listen to them there. I cannot promise I am nearly as good as Sherelle Palmer, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. So these are just some practice episodes. I will hopefully be bringing something to you late summer to the bookcast and then to ebook paperback. Probably not audio, but we'll see. This title is called Unexpected. It was my first holiday short. I think I released it in like 2015 on my website. And then I think in 2017, I pulled it down and expanded it and rewrote it. It's Will and Saida. It is just the sappiest, cutest holiday thing. If that's not your jam, you might want to skip this one, but I absolutely love this couple and I'm happy to bring this story to you. I want to remind you that I am a amateur. I don't know how to edit. I don't even have a recording closet, so I'm bringing you the best that I can do with what I've got. You're going to hear some background noise like cars driving by. This weed whacker guy will not go away. And so I'm just tired of waiting for him to stop. So apologies if you hear that. I'm going to stumble over a few words. I'm going to probably lose my place a couple of times. I apologize. But again, this is free and this is my practice. So hopefully this goes off without a hitch. So enough talking from me. Let's begin. Unexpected, a holiday short by D.L. White, Chapter 1. I don't know why you're being so difficult, Saida. Just put on some clothes, run a brush through your hair, and come over. Maybe I don't want to go over there. Maybe I want to sit on my couch and watch A Christmas Story back to back while I drink myself into oblivion. As if I needed to prove my point, I loudly sipped from my mug of spiked hot chocolate. That's the exact reason you did bring your behind over here. You don't need to be by yourself on Christmas, especially on Christmas. I rolled my eyes while switching the phone from one shoulder to the other. I was comfortable, deeply implanted into the corner of my new leather couch, under a chenille throw in my pajamas and fuzzy Christmas socks. The socks weren't actually necessary since it was the warmest Christmas Atlanta had seen in years, but they were red and had little green Christmas trees on them, so they were helping to bring in the holiday season as best they could. The trees on my socks were about the only sign of cheer in my condo. It had been years since I put up a Christmas tree and decorated for the season. It had also been years since I joined Faith, my friend as close as a sister, and her family for Christmas dinner. My new tradition wasn't one I picked up by choice. It was a natural consequence, and I was in no hurry to change something like a natural consequence. I promise you, honey, I'm fine right here. Enjoy your meal and your family. Are we doing Christmas after Christmas sales on Saturday? Faith sighed that long, drawn out sigh that usually accompanied a roll of her dark brown eyes and pursing of her pouty lips. Why do you have to ruin everything, you stubborn brat? Wait, what? I didn't know we were name calling on today of all days, the celebration of the birth of sweet little 8 pound, 6 ounce baby Jesus. Yes, we're name calling when you're being stubborn. I was trying to surprise you. Jay is coming to dinner. My heart skipped a beat at the mention of him. I didn't have to ask for a last name or a clarification on who Jay was. I knew very well, and Faith knew too. The very thought of him brought his face to my memory. Strong, square jaw with the dimple in the chin, skin like whipped moose, chiseled cheekbones, classic nose, wide set eyes so dark they looked black, and the longest, prettiest eyelashes you ever saw on a man. Always impeccably dressed and intelligent to boot. Jay was the one that got away. Don't lie to me, Faith. Jay's really coming to dinner. I wouldn't lie to you, Saida. Never have, never will. Well, when did that happen? How did you even get in touch with him? I have my ways, said Faith. In the background, I heard the clank of the heavy Le Creuset Dutch oven. A Le Cordon Bleu trained chef that owned a successful catering company, Faith could tear up a meal like nobody's business. You'd swear you were dining in a five-star restaurant and be right in her dining room. I'm serious, Faith. How did you manage that? How do you know he's really showing up? Anthony ran into him in Nashville a few weeks ago at that conference he went to. You remember they were in the same frat? They started talking, catching up. He works in building design or something. Was doing pretty well, but he hinted that his wife left last year. Left him? Women are giving up rich, handsome men these days? Girl, I guess. There was an affair, or at least that's the vibe Anthony got from talking to him. Anyway, he seemed to be having a hard time, said something about being alone this year, so Anthony invited him over. He came home and told me, and that's when I called you and asked if you were coming over. As stubborn as I was about spending the day in my pajamas, alone on my leather couch, the thought of seeing Jay after all these years could be a game changer. We'd all gone to college together at Albany State University. Jay and Anthony were line brothers in the Alpha Psi Alpha. In Alpha Psi Alpha. Anthony and Faith were dating and were trying to hook me up with Jay. He and I were friends, then close friends, and then one night after a party, on the walk back to the dorms, he pulled me into the shadow of a building and pressed himself against me, walking me backward until I was caught between the cold brick wall and the warm man with the racing heartbeat. His lips pressed against mine, tentatively at first, and then with a moan and a tilt of his head, deepened the kiss with an open mouth and a probe of his tongue. After a few minutes of breathless kisses and roaming hands, I pulled him from the darkness and around the corner to the side door into the building. I dragged him to the room that Faith and I shared, that I was pretty much living in alone since she spent a lot of her time in Anthony's place. Jay wasn't my first, but he may as well have been. Being with him felt so different than the few guys that had stumbled through quick, awkward sex. Jay moved slowly, fluidly. I felt like we were meant to be together. There was definitely no stumbling around and zero awkwardness. After we talked and talked, tangled up in the sheets with my cheek plastered to his warm skin, I listened to his heartbeat and splayed my fingers across his broad chest, feeling him catch his breath. I was already falling in love. We were inseparable, except when we were with Faith and Anthony. We were those cute couples that did everything together and always hung out together until we weren't. Jay was from a small South Georgia town, and the college experience seemed overwhelming to him. While he did well in classes, he wasn't used to having so many social options. The allure of being able to date so many women was tempting, so much that before the end of our sophomore year and right after Anthony and Faith got engaged, Jay broke up with me. Over the next few weeks, I saw him on campus, hands tightly clasped around the waist of one girl and then another, looking into someone else's eyes with that gaze I used to think was reserved for me, laughing that laugh that I thought only I could bring out. I was devastated. I tried everything to get him to realize the mistake he'd made, what he was giving up and leaving behind. Jay was more interested in the next party, the next girl, the next conquest. Faith and I graduated, and then a few months later I walked down the aisle as her maid of honor. Though I hadn't seen him in years, Jay was at the wedding, as handsome as he ever was, with a beautiful cinnamon tone woman on his arm. 12 years later, we'd be in the same room, him so handsome, more mature, and all grown up, hurt and vulnerable from the demise of his marriage, and me so, well, me. So, is he still fine? And what are you making? I made a valiant attempt at attempting I made a valiant attempt at sounding nonchalant, but Faith was on to me. I could almost hear the grin in her voice, knowing full well what my moments of silence represented. I haven't seen him, so I don't know, but Anthony didn't say he'd let himself go or anything. And I'm not going all out. Just a bone-in prime rib, garlic mashed potatoes, gravy, collard greens, macaroni and cheese, maybe a wedge salad with bacon bits, some yeast rolls. Oh, and a dulce de leche cake. And I'm thinking about whipping up a pound cake with buttercream frosting. Not much. Not going all out. I just gained 5 pounds listening to that. Dinner is at 3 o'clock. I'll save you a place next to Jay. Bring some wine, a nice Cabernet or Merlot. I already told. What makes you think I've changed my mind? Because I know you, and I know I can always change your mind. See you in a bit. My retort was cut off by a dial tone. I sucked my teeth, rolled my eyes, and tossed the phone onto the couch. I stomped to the bedroom, heading straight for the closet. Dressing for this dinner was going to be of utmost importance. I hadn't seen Jay since he paraded that woman in my face and had the nerve to be smug about it. I hummed, stepping into the closet to survey my options. I want to make a good impression, but not look like an attention whore. I eyed a pair of skinny jeans, dark rents. My full figure did look ridiculously good in them, but the way Faith cooked, I would need more room than those would allow. I need to show off my grown and sexy, but not look thirsty. I stumbled through a few more options before I grabbed up a brand new black sweater dress with stylish zipper embellishment across each shoulder. It hugged my ample hips and showed off my bust in glorious fashion. At a perfect mid thigh length, it was long enough to be classy, but short enough to be sexy. I'd pair it with over the knees 3-inch suede boots. I plugged in my flat iron and turned on the shower. I was going to be a spectacle or die trying. Time to show Jay what he'd been missing all these years. Chapter 2. Merry Christmas! Faith bellowed as soon as she opened the door. A toddler was perched on one hip and a shy 4-year-old hid behind her legs. I stepped into the house, my heels clicking on the marble inlay. Anthony did very well as a software consultant, and Faith's catering business added to the pot. Consequently, the Thomas family lived very well in a near palatial estate in affluent Alpharetta. You'd never know it by looking at them, though. They were the most down to earth people I had ever met, generous to a fault, and always happy to lend a helping hand or a word of advice where needed. I'm not sure you need this wine. Sounds like you've already had enough to drink. I handed Faith the 2 bottles of wine I had picked up. I couldn't decide between a Cabernet or Merlot, so I brought both, and I took the baby from her arms. Can't I just be happy to see you? It's been years since you were here on Christmas. Come on in, make yourself at home. Wait, I hissed at Faith before she veered off to the kitchen. Is is he here? She rolled her eyes. Did you miss that Range Rover in the driveway? That's not mine, and you know Anthony is a Denali guy. I hadn't missed the ebony black SUV with the shiny alloy wheels hogging most of the driveway. She set the bottles of wine near a small but growing collection of wines on the counter and reached for Avery, who nearly launched out of my arms into hers. Ashley followed close behind her mother. Hello, Miss Ashley. Acting like you don't know me. She smiled and ducked out of sight. It always took her a minute to warm up to me. I see you back there. We'll talk later, okay? Faith pushed me toward the living room with her fingertips. Stop stalling. Go. Make a good impression. I sucked in a deep breath and stepped down the hall into the formal living room where Anthony was holding court near the fireplace, his glass half full of something dark. The tree was the focal point of the room, grandiose and glamorous, impressive in both height and decoration. Faith changed the theme and colors every year. This year, the bulbs were deep ruby red satin and glittering gold that reflected the softly glowing pearl lights perfectly. The red velvet tree skirt, unfurled and surrounding the tree so elegantly, was the perfect touch. She outdid herself this year, said Anthony from across the room. Our biggest tree yet. Had to decorate half of it from upstairs. She's a big one, I agreed with a smile. Merry Christmas, Anthony. Did you guys get the gifts from me? He nodded. The girls love their Misty Copeland Barbies. We'll set them up right next to the Ava dolls, and I'm digging this G-Shock watch. He flicked his wrist to show off the watch I'd gotten him. That didn't really go with the casual look he was going for, with slacks, a long-sleeved shirt, and vest, but I appreciated the sentiment. Faith loved the Tiffany pendant you got her. I was a little scared because I had a blue box under the tree for her too, but I'm sure you ladies will chat about that. So, I glanced around the room to find it empty, save myself, Anthony, and another gentleman that looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. Where is Jay? I wanted to say hello. Jay had to step outside to take a phone call. He'll be right back, but this is his brother Will. Less than interested in some counterfeit version of Jay, but not wanting to seem rude, I stepped forward and shook the hand offered to me. Nice to meet you, I mumbled with a smile. He replied with something similar. He was handsome and looked just like his brother. He just wasn't Jay. The door to the patio swung open and in walked Jay, tucking a mobile phone into the pocket of a pair of dark jeans. He was taller, broader, even more handsome version of the Jay I used to know. He wore black loafers and a gray cashmere v-neck sweater with a shirt under it, the collar unbuttoned enough to reveal the neck I used to love to plant kisses around. Jay, hello. It's been a long time. The words tumbled out of my mouth as I walked, no, glided across the room toward him. I extended a hand and gave him my warmest smile, which I hoped would let him know that I harbored no hard feelings toward him. I was older, wiser, more mature, a better woman than I had been so many years ago. Hey, what's up? He said, brushing past me. I stood there looking like a fool, my hand still extended for more than a few seconds before spinning on my heels and turning around. I watched Jay pick up a glass and shoot back a mouthful of liquor. Was that who I think it was? Will asked him. Jay nodded. Yeah. Yeah, it's all good. We can sign paperwork on Monday. Yeah? Congrats on that, bro. Will's face lit up as he stretched an arm out to his brother. They bumped fists and made irritating grunting sounds at each other. To Anthony, Will said, Jay here just closed the deal for us to remodel that old beat-up strip mall off of Panola Road. The plan is to tear most of it down, reconfigure the interior, redo the facades. It'll be a multi-million-dollar deal. Not our biggest project, but our most public-facing for sure. So, I stepped into the room and tried to wiggle my way into the conversation. You two run a renovation business or something? Yes, that's exactly what we do, answered Will. Halter Construction does commercial structure renovation, like when a company buys an old, previously existing building and wants to retrofit it to a vision for the new place. They call us. Sounds interesting and profitable. You must be the muscle, I purred, sliding up next to Jay, gripping his arm. It was deliciously meaty inside the soft fabric of the sweater. Jay stared at me, those deep, dark eyes locked on mine. Then his gaze slid down until they reached my hand on his arm. He looked up at me again and stepped away, conveniently removing my touch. Okay if I refill? He didn't wait for an answer, instead heading toward the expansive bar on the other side of the tree. Confused, I shot a glance at Anthony. He shrugged and took a sip of his drink. In the corner, Jay was loudly tossing ice cubes into a glass. Will watched him for a second, his brows furrowed deeply before glancing at me with an apologetic smile. I didn't bother to smile back. I turned around and stomped into the spacious kitchen, where I found Faith spooning au jus over the prime rib on a festive red serving platter. In multicolored dishes around the kitchen, sides were attractively prepared and waiting to be whisked to the buffet in the dining room. The entire room smelled delicious. How'd it go? She asked, her brows high up on her forehead. I shook my head and headed to the wine, snatching a glass from its fancy storage system. I plucked the bottle of Merlot from the collection of wines, pulled a drawer handle, retrieved the opener, and went at the bottle, aggressively wrenching and twisting until the cork popped. I wasted no time in filling a bulbous glass. Pour me one, she ordered, carting the aromatic roast past me and depositing it on the center of the buffet. When she came back, I had a glass waiting for her, but I was working on gulping mine down. I was fuming. Absolutely fuming. Faith angled her head back to peek around the corner as she took a sip of wine. Did you talk to him? Mm-hmm. I gulped down more wine while I cut my eyes at her and then in the direction of the living room. What's that look for? What happened? I tried to speak to that fool. He didn't even say hello, said, Hey, what's up? And walked right past me. Then I tried again. I put my hand on his arm, paid him a little nice compliment. He looked at me like my hands were dripping with acid and moved away from me. He did what? Like how? I eyed her like Jay had eyed me, then mimicked his stepping away. She mused, sipping her wine. Maybe he needs to warm back up to you. Give him a little time. You're sitting next to him at dinner. Plenty of time to get reacquainted. She set down her wine glass and grabbed mine as well. Help me carry the stuff to the buffet so we can sit down to eat. So, Jay, what keeps you busy these days? Faith refused to move me to a different seat, despite my begging. She was convinced he just needed a hot meal and some time to warm up to me, and he would be fine. I wasn't so sure about that. Work, he bit out. I've been building my business for the past 10 years. Then he dipped his head and stabbed at a mound of green beans, stuffing them into his mouth. Oh, well, that's good. You're winning contracts, so it looks like all that work has paid off. What about in your off time? Are you still playing? Nah, he said, grumbling, shaking his head. I don't get into too much outside of gym time. Surprised, an eyebrow shot up. I always knew him as an outgoing young man involved in sports and myriad campus clubs. Really? You used to play on the Intramural Football League, and you guys always sponsored game night. Remember when we would get a bunch of board games and card games together and some drinks? Ooh, those were fun, Faith said, jumping in. I was the categories queen. Yeah, well, some people grow up past their college days, said Jay, swiping the corner of his mouth with a napkin. Some people have business to take care of and can be running the streets like they don't have any responsibilities. Who's running the streets like they don't have responsibility? I asked. Everyone needs an outlet for relaxation and stress release. Maybe you need to pick up a hobby. Jay paused and slowly rolled his eyes over to me. I stared him down, daring him to step over the imaginary line in the sand I'd just drawn. Are you trying to say something to me? You seem uptight, is all I'm saying. I don't give a shit what you think, obviously. So you can keep your opinions, Jay. Saida. Faith's voice was low but stern, and even though I was a grown woman, I knew she meant business. Then she smiled, but I saw right through that fakery. It's Christmas. Let's not. Tell her to let's not. She's the one over here deciding what folks need. His chair scraped roughly against the hardwood floor as he pushed back. I need to refill my drink. I watched a beet red pallor cross Anthony's complexion. Hey, man, take it easy on my floors. We just got 'em done last spring. Nobody cares about your damn floors, he mumbled, shuffling away from the table, heading toward the bar. I eyed Faith, but she was glaring at her husband, who gave her a helpless shrug of his shoulder and a wide-eyed stare. Um, Will cleared his throat, eyeing his brother out of the corner of his eye. The the prime rib, it's delicious. Everything is just great. I really like the macaroni and cheese. I dabble a bit in the kitchen, but this is on another level. Do you use Gruyere in your bechamel sauce? Yes, she said, brightening. I do. You have quite the cultured palate. Thank you, Will. Faith graciously accepted the compliment, a smile on her lips, but worry in her eyes as Jay approached the table, his glass brimming with dark liquid. He dropped into his chair and dug into his meal again. Yeah, it's all really good. He picked up a knife and began sawing at a slice of fork tender beef, scraping against Faith's fine china. I sure appreciate this pity meal y'all invited me to, since my wife left me and moved in with some broke ass Jay, said Will, his voice at the bottom of his throat, practically growling through clenched teeth. Take it easy, man. And the bitch is asking for fucking alimony like I want to pay her to not be married to me. Fuck her, man. She can marry that broke nigga she left me for. Let him buy her Gucci and Prada. Let him pay her credit card bills. He dropped his knife, sending a spray of au jus across his chest. Shit. This is fucking cashmere, goddammit. Why are these weak ass knives for cutting meat? Faith hopped up from the table and sprang into action. Take it off. I have some club soda I can treat it with, and I'll put it in the steamer. Won't hurt it at all. Jay's limbs were loose, his words slurred as he pulled the sweater over his head and tossed it at her. She took it and escaped to the laundry room. He resumed his seat in his undershirt and jeans. I reached for my glass of wine and sipped. I sure was glad I left my calm and peaceful condo to share dinner with a drunken boor. He had the demeanor and the capacity of a man that had been drinking for a long time. No wonder his wife had left him. I felt like I dodged a bullet myself. Don't care about her anyway, Jay quietly raged before inserting a forkful of food into his mouth. Got bitches everywhere that want me to be with me. One right next to me that won't leave me alone. Hey, Will, he said, his head lobbing toward his brother across the table. Why don't you tell her I don't date fat bitches? That's just fine, Will, I responded, giving him a bright smile. Because I don't date sloppy drunk assholes. Excuse me. I pushed my chair back from the table, picked up my plate, and marched into the kitchen. I ran into Faith on her way from the laundry room. Thanks for dinner, honey. I'm out of here. No! Faith's eyes bugged out and she reached for me, wrapping her thin fingers around my arms. Do not leave me alone with these men. Anthony won't say anything, and Jay is so damn drunk. That drunk just called me a fat bitch. I grabbed my purse from the alcove next to the refrigerator where I'd left it when I came in. I don't care how handsome he used to be, or how much I thought I loved him. I am not sitting through one more second of that. I jabbed my finger toward the dining room where it sounded like Jay was getting started again. I leaned toward Faith and dropped a kiss on her cheek. Merry Christmas. Thanks for the Gucci clutch. Can't wait to break it in. Y'all try to have a good day. The sound of my heels echoed up into the high ceiling as I headed toward the front door, pulled it open, and started down the sidewalk toward my car. I stopped long enough to gawk at the Range Rover rudely parked diagonally across the driveway. It looked as if Jay had arrived drunk and got worse. The front door opened and Will stepped out, rushing down the steps. He and Jay had similar features, but obviously Will was younger. He stopped when he was a few steps from me and shoved his hands into gray black distressed jeans. His sweater, a rich cranberry, looked nice against his lighter skin tone. Uh, I didn't. I'm sorry, I never caught your name. I glared at him for a moment or two before I answered. Saida. Saida Harlan. As if on automatic, I offered him a hand. He took it like he was going to shake it, but instead, he held it in his hands, gently rubbing it between two palms. Your brother is an asshole and a drunkard. I'm sure you know this, so why you let him jump all over me and didn't say a thing, Miss Harlan, Saida. Jay's actually my half brother, but we were raised together, so. He lifted and lowered his shoulders in a shrug. Anyway, that's why I came out. To apologize for him for the way he treated you and the things he said. It was uncalled for, and I should have stepped in earlier. Well, my hand felt warm and closed in his. My body felt warm under the gaze of his espresso brown eyes. I thank you for the apology. I appreciate it. You're not taking off, are you, because of him? I didn't want to come over here anyway, but Faith said he was coming to dinner, and I thought maybe. I shook my head, then looked down at our hands, mine still intertwined in his. I guess you really can't go home again. He. Will turned to look back at the house, like he could see through the brick exterior to the scene in the dining room. Jay's had a rough time of it the last few years. The business hit a rough patch, and his wife got impatient with the restructure. She left last year, but as you heard, she's holding out for a ridiculous amount of alimony now that the business is doing well again. I nodded, understanding, not forgiving, but it helped to know where the vitriol was coming from. I appreciate the explanation. He's still pretty loose with his mouth, and I don't appreciate that. I completely understand, and I'm sure when he gets right, he'll be embarrassed at himself. But I was hoping I could make up for my brother's behavior. I pulled my hand from his, warm as it was, and started inching toward my car. I don't need you to make up for him. I need him to do better. Please, don't go. You haven't even had dessert yet. Is that another crack about my weight? What is it with you two? A woman is bigger than a toothpick and she's all of a sudden too fat for you? I propped my hands on my hips and lifted my chin in defiance. No, he said, almost shouted. Saida, no, that wasn't a crack about your weight, and not that you needed me to tell you that you look amazing, but you look amazing. His eyes skipped down my figure and back up, lingering at my chest. I lifted my hands to block his vision and glared. I'm sorry. My brother may not be interested. Actually, I think he's too drunk to be interested in anything. But I really appreciate what you've got going on here. Huh, I grunted, eyeing him. You're not weird or anything, are you? He laughed, showing off a wide smile of straight white teeth. He had a small dimple high up on his left cheek. No, I'm not weird. I don't think I am anyway. Faith was telling me about you before you got here, how you work with at-risk kids and volunteer at the nursery at the Children's Health Care, how you two have been friends since your first day at Albany, how you and Jay were together for a while. He must have lost his damn mind or something, because if he let a woman like you get away, he had to have been crazy. My sentiments exactly. All this flattery aside, I need to get going. I appreciate the apology for your brother, but there's nothing you need to do to make up for him. Have a good day, and I hope you're driving home. I stepped back, then turned around and walked to my car. I heard sneakers on the pavement, keeping a good distance, but still following me. I reached the driver's side door and turned to find him standing on the other side of the car. take me with you." My eyebrows shot up in complete surprise. "I'm sorry, do what?" "Jay's miserable and I'm uncomfortable, and they're his friends, not mine, and I'd like to talk to you some more." "It's Christmas Day. Where am I supposed to be taking you?" "Anywhere. Waffle House, the parking lot at the mall. Let's just." He turned, glanced at the house, then turned back and winked at me. That pretty brown eye winked at me. "Jay will probably pass out soon, and then I'll come back and take him home. Let's escape for a while."